And we're rolling. Happy Friday. You know, one of the things that every professional podcaster does is have the microphone set up before they press record. I've had this issue in the past, and we're having it right now. Picture mode close. Here we are. Happy Friday. Hey, I appreciate some of the feedback and comments that you guys have given me off of the Diamond series from earlier this week's solo show. I wasn't really expecting much, really wasn't expecting anything on that response to the Diamond series, but I think hearing people's perspectives from people who remembered the Diamond series, that was kind of nostalgic and had some random, uh, just not random people at all, but just some random feedback from people I haven't heard from in a while, which is fascinating that brought that about. And then some new feedback from the Diamond series. And it's interesting to me because I haven't talked about the Diamond series or mental frameworks in a few years. Or I've talked about mental frameworks. I haven't talked about the Diamond series. So for those who are just tuning in today, the Diamond series is a system I created. It was the first original system that I created when I started teaching. And it was a mental framework that I used with organizations and sports teams. Obviously, it's based off a baseball diamond, but then I also used it with businesses and organizations. And really what it is you think of it as home plate as the start of the diamond, right? And you kind of go around the bases. But if you just think of it in that system, you essentially start with meaning and purpose. And the way I'm kind of understanding it is you align yourself in the direction of meaning and purpose, and then that moves you down to first base, which is your standards and your values. And I talk a lot about this with people in terms of standards and values being basically the root of the principles in which you carry. And I've said this often over the years, principles are few, methods are many. And I think that's where when you move from first base to second base and you head over into systems, that's where your methods change. And because variables are always changing and processes can be tweaked and maneuvered differently depending on environments and situations. So, you largely build your process and your systems based off of your principles, but your principles don't change. So it's sort of getting down to first base from an alignment of a purpose or some sort of meaning that you feel called to. And if you don't have an answer to that, I think the point of the Diamond series is it eventually gets you to not a definitive answer, but something that you at least feel some sort of substance to contemplate on, right? So anyways, if you go from home plate to first, that's where we get our principles. The principles move you into systems and methods, which is at second base. That's sort of the middle ground. And then you head over to third base, which is your vision. It's sort of an alignment with the future. Anytime you're able to cast out a visual understanding of what the future can be, this is the form of manifestation, you feel a jolt of energy from that. And I think that's sort of the point, because obviously in the Diamond series, it's rather direct and objective, and you can get to each base and each step, and you can ask yourself questions that are definitive. They're definitive as the question. The question can be contemplated, but certain things are going to be definitely concrete. I think that the reasoning for manifestation is just the process of forward movement and momentum. And it's not necessarily trying to ever get there, because you never get there. One of my favorite questions from one of my favorite philosophers, Alan Watts, asks the question, where is there? That's a cool question. I think sometimes we talk so often about survival and the best thing for the human species. And the first thought that always comes to my head, and that is, well, what is surviving? What is the concept of surviving? Just things to think about. But the Diamond series is more direct, and it allows you to continue kind of have this circular flow that allows you to kind of design your life. And after the vision at third base, and you kind of manifest something of the future that attracts an excitement towards your energy and aligns you towards something that you're leaning into or heading towards, sort of your North Star in a forecasting way, that is what brings you back home. And that's the completion of purpose and meaning, right? And so you can walk people through that on the Diamond Series. So it's been really meaningful getting feedback from people on the Diamond Series from this past week's solo show, because for whatever reason, I don't think I paid it as much respect as maybe I should have. I haven't talked about it in many years and thought about it in many years. And so it's cool to see it. It's cool to see it impact me again and bring it back into conversation, something I haven't talked about for a while. But it's also fascinating to me how it still withstands, seemingly, it seems as if it withstands some meaning, because it seemed to have brought some people some direction. And that's really cool. Shout out to the Diamond Series. Anyways, happy Friday, Coffee Buzz Friday. Let's hammer. I got a lot of questions. I'm sticking to the three. I really like the 3-bit series, and we'll ride with them. So the first question I got today was, if you could ask God, life, the angels, or powers that be any question and receive a direct answer, what would it be? So if you could ask God, life, the angels, or powers that be any question and receive a direct answer, what would it be? I wrote in my book, Without Words, the second chapter, I titled it Abstract God. And the reason why I titled it Abstract God is because the way in which I understand the narrative of human consciousness is that it's all interpreted differently. So we have constructs in reality that we can together connect as real. So if we both see a tree in front of us and we can touch the tree and see the tree and sort of explain the tree to each other, then the tree is real, right? So that is a tangible, objective, it's material in space and time, right? It's form that we can agree on. We tie meaning to it, which is a fascinating thing about language in general, right? Because language is really just sound and vibration, in which we've attached that sound to meaning. So we give sound meaning. And then as we teach each other language, and it evolves over time, we can start to form sounds and create them into sentences or paragraphs or story form or whatever. And the more in which we have meaning to these sounds, we have reality, and we can understand and share reality together. So I've always thought, I shouldn't say I've always thought, it's not recently either. We'll put it in a bucket of 5 years or so. I've found that to be a lot of the way in which I understand the language of God, meaning God, the word God, is used as symbolism, or its meaning to sound, right? And so I say that because when I think of the next thing's life, the angels or powers that be, right? It's sort of, well, who is your God? Which God is your God? And what universe, what cosmic energy do you align with? So I think that anything that we would ask any of those powers, any question and receive a direct answer, what would it be? I mean, I think the simplest, easy way out of this question, the easy way out to answer this, is to say, well, I would ask God or the powers to be, or the universe, or the cosmos, or nature, that meaning to language, whatever that is. I would just ask it, what is the meaning of this? What is the meaning of survival? What is the meaning of progress? What is the intentionality that we are supposed to have, if we're supposed to have any, while I'm a part of the functionality of humanity, right? Why would me and somebody else create meaning to a word and attach it to things and share conversation in that? That's what I would ask. When I go back to why I mentioned, or why I said abstract God in the book, is because I talked about the difference in interpretation. And so it's always been a really fascinating thing to me to even have a conversation about God. It's a beautiful conversation. It always is. It's probably my favorite conversation with anybody of any diverse race, cultural differences. It's my favorite thing because even I've found, even in the perspective of atheism, people can still, there's still an energetic frequency or vibration to communicating on behalf of the word God. And so maybe that would be the deeper question that I would want answered. If I could receive a direct answer, what would it be? It would be more of the confusion to the language of God. And why does God draw out so many responses from humans? I mean, from everybody. Like I said, someone who's who's an atheist will still communicate on such a topic and the words and the meaning of that, and they will still share interpretation. So my answer would be, if I could receive a direct answer, what would it be? My answer would be, why? What is the point? What is the meaning of humans from all different backgrounds, all different interpretations, talking about God, and so often talking so concretely in variations of levels of confidence? How is it that we still find ways to act as if we know while always knowing that we don't know? That would be I would want to know why we have that puzzling process in our life. Because if I think about the tree, no one debates the tree when we both see the tree at the same time. And why it's called a tree, well, I kind of already said that. It doesn't really matter why it's called a tree. The sound tree, if we think of tree as a sound, the sound tree is language with meaning, and it allows us to agree that this thing in nature in front of us that we can touch, see, feel, potentially smell, all the above, we can agree on that as being true and not move past the truth of that because it's real in our reality. But if we talk about God, we disagree. However, neither party knows the answer. So how can we disagree at all if neither of us know? So if I moved beyond the meaning of life, that would be obviously I'd want to know the meaning of life. Here's it. Who wouldn't? But that would be my actual, the the question I would want to ask to receive a direct answer. That's a cool question. Thanks for getting my brain going on that. Next question. What shocks you about yourself? What shocks you about yourself? What shocks me about me? What does Harvey get shocked about by Harvey? What shocks me about me? I think and maybe a lot of these answers are built off of the first question because my brain is now thinking about that, right? Because I'm thinking about something that shocks me about me is things that I will, in one day I will sound so confident talking about a subject and feel so confident. I'll be there. I will be solidified in my responses to anything. And then what can be so shocking is how is the next day potentially the exact opposite? And I find myself in an insecurity or unsure or not knowing. And it's not shocking. Doesn't shock me about me. I know that that's a human behavior that's very consistent across all of us. But I guess what's more shocking about me, what shocks me about me is, what's coming to mind right now is it shocks me about the things that I'm curious about. And you're always slightly at least in my experience, you're always slightly nervous about things that you're curious about, especially if it's not in the field that you're accepted in. So what I mean by that is that if I go to any baseball organization in the world, really, at this point in my career, at any level, professionally down to the youth, I have enough of an experience to talk baseball about the game, and it if I'm curious about that, it's not as intense because it's accepted. And I've built up enough time and experience and history and of a network, and I have a playing career and a coaching career, and like I said, I've just been at every level of baseball. I've seen every single level of it. There truly is not a level I don't think I would have seen. I mean, there's some things overseas I haven't seen, but as far as American baseball, college at every level, minor league baseball, professional baseball, obviously the high school and the youth, and as a player and as a coach, and pretty much all the levels except for the big leagues as a player would be the only thing that I haven't done in the game, and most likely 0.00%, maybe 0.0001% I could maybe do later on in life, but that one's probably done with. And where I'm saying that about the shockingly side is that if I went into those worlds and I was curious about something, I don't think it wouldn't be odd or unique to anything. But then it's like, why do I care about airways? Obviously, I care about airways and teeth because of my own personal health job or journey, or I'm curious about religions, or I'm curious about maybe politics or world history. And I think what always shocks me about me is the things that I'm curious about outside of the normalcy of things that I do for a living or have done for a living. And what shocks me is when I get curious about something, how I will inevitably find time to study it, and in it for no reason, like for no what seems like no benefit at all when I first start studying a subject that's outside of my, we'll call it my scope of normalcy, something that wouldn't seem odd, right? What's weird to me is that I will continuously go down the rabbit hole, and I will shock myself as I study a subject. And I think that's why I say that is that I think that has a lot to do with the writing that I've done over the years, because the last book specifically, like you don't know as a writer, you don't know what you're going to do. Like you don't, it's hard to explain what it is that you're ever going to write. And it's hard to tell people that. It's literally shocking how it's an energy inside of you. And the energy inside of you somehow, for whatever reason, excuse me, it moves you into actions that slowly incubate this project, which in my life comes out as the books. And it's just really shocking to me how you can have an energy within you and you can't put words to it. You can't explain it to other people. You can't try to even tell the closest people what you're trying to do, but somehow something in you energetically, inevitably, if you follow it, even though you don't know what it is, it comes out and it goes from nothingness to somethingness and you make something. And from the last two books that I've written, when I get done with them, sure, it's nice to see the covers of them and people liking them and all that stuff is definitely cool. It's it's uh it's just shocking to me that I have that in me. And I think all of us have it in us. But yeah, taking something artistically from nothing and making it something is what shocks me. That would be my answer. It took me a minute to think through that. That was a good one. That was a good one. So these are like I said, I got a few. I got one. What have you learned about yourself in the past year? What about yourself do you have trouble acknowledging? Tough ones. What has been your most valuable life lesson? I'm going to stick with that first one. What have you learned about yourself in the past year? So I like this exercise because I like asking people that question. What have you learned about yourself in the past year? So if I start from April of last year to April of this year, a year ago, I was standing on the line in San Diego at Petco. I think it's called Petco Stadium. Is I would or no PNC. I think it's Pittsburgh. I think it's Petco. Wherever the Padres play in San Diego, it's a beautiful stadium. It's one of my favorite stadiums in the big leagues. And I was standing on the line earlier this month, right? So like the first week of April, maybe the last week of March for opening day. And I was really unsure of what I was doing, meaning I was kind of in a weird spot because I wanted to do what I'm doing now, but I was starting a year where I knew I was going to work every day for the next 6 months. And I really wasn't going to be able to have the freedom to do things like this. I wasn't going to be able to podcast regularly. I wasn't going to have free time. I wasn't going to spend time with my family. Was I writing the book? I was probably editing the book without words still. So I was editing that. I wasn't necessarily, I had probably already written the first draft, but really wanted to write. I really want to do a lot of these things I'm doing now. And I like variety working with clients. I love working with people, not just in baseball. I love baseball players and coaches, obviously, which is a lot of my clients now, but I like working with the variety of people outside of that as well. And I just like exploring things. Like I just kind of talked about the shockingness of myself and what I feel inside of me. So, anyways, I'm standing on this line, and I remember thinking to myself, like, how cool it was that I got to do that, but how frustrating it was that I somewhat had to do that because of the job that I had. And all I could think about was the weird feeling that I had, the 6 month gauntlet of a season every day at work where I couldn't really be doing things that I wanted to be doing that were artistically because I didn't have enough time. And so one of the things that I decided to do, and I did this 2 years ago, but then I really took sobriety extremely serious around 2 years ago. And I would say what I learned about myself through that is that when you're coaching Major League Sports every day, traveling every day, or playing every day, you just have a game every day. And if you don't, if you have an off day, you're typically traveling on an off day. And so what I learned was I had this artistic thing inside of me that I really wanted to express and I really wanted to see outside of the daily job that I had. But the job paid the bills, it took care of my family, it made us very comfortable, and that stuff is very real in life. But what I learned about myself was how diligent and disciplined I could be with small windows of time. So meaning I when I stopped, drinking alcohol, a lot of that was so that I could get up earlier to write, or I could get up earlier to read, or I could go and travel things. And so throughout the last year, because I was able to sleep better, eat better, think clearer, get up earlier, I was able to wake up earlier and kind of make myself this morning person. I started learning how peaceful I enjoy alone time and thinking time and creative time. And I would say this is where the completion of this answer comes in from what I've learned about myself in the last year. What I've learned is that when you aren't getting high or buzzed on artificial things, like in my case, marijuana or alcohol, if I'm not getting altered in those states, well, you still have to get high. So what I've learned is the importance of a highness in your life. And where highs come in, if you're not using drugs or alcohol, in my opinion, comes in through curiosity. And you get high on your own supply, we'll say it. You get high on your curiosities. That in itself shocks me about myself. And what became a high over the last year from that day, because I remember that, to now, it's been 1 year. Obviously, I was able to publish my book. I've done, I think, what is this, the Coffee Buzz? I don't know what maybe this is Coffee Buzz 7. I did 27 episodes that I've already launched. So it's like close to 40. And then I have a bunch of guests that are already coming out and multiple shows that are going to keep coming out every week. And so you look at what is that, 40 plus shows already in this month, and been able to, kind of get myself into a snowbird situation where I get to live in Minnesota, which I love in the summer, and work with people that I've known for a while and love deeply, and then live in the desert in the winter and sort of get a feel for two drastically different environments. My book came out in December. None of this is in arrogance or talking about profitability, because that stuff is not profitable as far as podcasting and books go. At this point in my career, it's artistic. And so those have all been artistic endeavors that I haven't done for money. And I've been able to go to some book events finally in my life. I've always wanted to do that. And most of my, I would say, artistic energy and highs that I've now been able to repeatedly produce and create, that are coming out regularly, are based off of all those times in those 6 months of last summer and then last fall. The discipline that I had in windows of daily pursuits every day, being able to research and study and meet people and shake people's hands and write and read. And that became my high. And so I would say that's something that I've learned about myself in the last year. I've learned that I can get high on my own supply, my own brain power, my own thoughts, my own curiosity, my own actions, my own artistic endeavors, which pulls stuff out of you. And that, I feel like I've always known that. And I feel like a lot of times we use drugs and alcohol to think that we need that to get stuff. I've just learned that you don't. And that's a cool thing that I've learned in the last year. Thanks for the questions. Good thought, good thinking time today. It's going to these vortexes when you do these things. You just let it rip, you talk it out, and you try to answer stuff as best you can. Thanks for the questions. Happy Friday. Cheers, y'all.